I like wasting food. Okay, don't bolt just yet. Let me give you 3, maybe 4 reasons why, and I'm gonna start with a sort of a non-obvious but important one: health. This is often overlooked or minimized, but it really stuck with me after reading 51 books on health and nutrition. One thing that came up again and again was our relationship with food. Now, if you're like me, you grew up in an era where your parents told you to eat everything on your plate because there were starving kids in Africa. I didn't listen to my body. Throwing away food might feel like a waste, but hear me out. Overeating isn't doing you any good either. Now, I'm trying to make sure that my kids listen to their bodies, and I'm working on it all the time with myself. Overconsumption can lead to excess calorie intake and weight gain. One of the keys to maintaining or even losing weight is learning to listen to your hunger cues. In one book I read, Eat Like the Animals, they mentioned something called completion compulsion, which is when we eat out of guilt or politeness, not hunger. Like when you clean your plate because you feel bad wasting food when you're out with family and friends. Sound familiar? But you don't want to become a human garbage disposal. You don't need to save the food by eating it. Over time, that kind of thinking chips away at your health. Establishing a better relationship with food, not just with what you eat, but how much, is a key part to feeling better, living better, and finding balance. I talk more about that in section 2 on mindset in that health and nutrition video I made. Which brings me to reason number 2. The second reason is safety. And to talk about that, we kind of need to dive into the weird world of expiry dates. You know, those sell by, best before, use by labels, which honestly are mostly made up. These terms aren't regulated in most of the US. Only use by is federally defined, and that's just for infant formula because the nutrients start to degrade. For everything else, those dates are basically manufacturer suggestions when the product might taste best. 20 states ban the sale of food after its use by or sell by date, but 30 don't. Now, do those 20 states know something that those 30 don't? And it's not always about protecting the consumer. Take Montana, for example. They have a strict milk law that says milk can't be sold more than 12 days after bottling. Not because it's unsafe, but to protect the local dairy industry from out-of-state competition. That 12-day window makes it almost impossible for places like Washington or Idaho to ship milk into Montana profitably. So they just don't. Montana milk producers get a monopoly and a bunch of good milk gets tossed. I mean, Google it. There's a bunch of videos of store owners just literally dumping fresh milk down the sink. That's just to say sometimes it's political, it's not about safety. Of course, manufacturers want you to have the best possible experience with their product. Some do lab testing to figure out shelf life, but more often it's a consumer taste panel. They sort of like hand out samples and then ask, people, when does it start tasting off? And then they probably average out those responses and maybe even pad a bit, just to be safe. But like generally dry goods have like a 1, 2, or 3 year best before date. And like some products like salt and water have best before just to comply, but like water's been around for millions of years. So yeah, I mean, like, look, one of the outcomes is you end up buying more. You'll see the best before date, it looks expired, you chuck it, you buy a new one. That reminds me of the time when I worked as a part-time Hershey salesperson. I had to go into these small convenience stores, many without air conditioning, and I would pull old or melted chocolate off the shelves. Sometimes worse, fly larvae or ant infestation. Now, this was in Canada, early 2000s. Before everything was like heat sealed. I want you to think like old school Kit Kat bars or like Hershey bars that are wrapped in foil. And the worst, glossettes, which were chocolate covered raisins and peanuts. And the peanuts went rancid and the raisins attracted ants. Now, I'd go in, I'd clean it all out, and then the store owner would be compensated. Hershey believed it was worth it to make sure that customers didn't get a bad bar, whether it was bug infested or melted or just ballooned, which is like, in that white layer when chocolate's been melted and then re-solidified. It wasn't unsafe, it was just not ideal. Anyway, where were we? Right, safety. I don't want you to get sick from something spoiled, and those dates can help avoid that, but most food safety experts just say to use your senses. If something smells weird or looks off or feels slimy, don't eat it. If it looks and smells fine, it probably is, but that said, you have to find a balance. I know milk doesn't expire the day after the best before date. I've made yogurt with milk that was technically expired and it was perfectly fine. But depending on the situation, I still like to play it safe. And here's why. Some bacteria that can make you sick, You can't see it, you can't smell it, and you can't taste it. All right, so here are some handling tips. When you're buying dairy, fish, or meat at the grocery store, bring some ice packs, and when you get home, get it into the fridge as soon as possible. Store milk in the back of the fridge, not the door, since the door temperature fluctuates a lot. And finally, avoid touching the inside of the cap. For milk, yogurt, or sour cream, your fingers can introduce microbes, and that can speed up spoilage. And always make sure the lid is on sealed tight before you put it away. Oh, this isn't meant to scare you, just best practices to keep things fresh. Even if something looks fine, I might toss it. That $10 3-week-old leftover in the back of your fridge, it's not worth mild food poisoning. Leftover rice, for example, and I know you probably have some right now in the back of your fridge, it should actually be eaten within 3 to 4 days, not longer. And see, that's the sunk cost fallacy in action. Thinking, well, I already spent the money, I should eat it. But honestly, you're more invested in that $5 or $10 than the possible consequences of eating it. And here's the thing, if you get sick and call in sick, you just lost a day's wage. And sure, we have sick days, or at least I'd like to believe most of us do, I think. But if America's taught me anything, it's that companies don't like it when you actually use them. So better safe than sorry. Now, you know, back in January when LA had those raging fires, I was living close to the Eaton fire and we had to evacuate because our house lost power for 4 days. And I came home to a fridge full of food that most of which was spoiled, but some I wasn't sure, but I had to dispose of anyway. Now, did I feel sad? Yes, but not guilty. Because was I checking stuff with my senses? Nope. I just got rid of all that food, just not in the trash. Which brings me to reason number 3, the green bin. I picked up the Waste-Free Kitchen Handbook, and in it, they lay out the hierarchy of food waste in the home kitchen. And the least preferred option is throwing food in the trash. Instead, start by planning your meals, shopping with a list, storing food properly, and freezing your extras. You know, pretty straightforward stuff. Now, the book even suggests feeding the dog scraps, but obviously, that's up to dog owners out there. The book even talks about what you should and should not feed your dog. That's fine. But after that, they've got your city's green bin and in-sink disposal, or a garburator if you're Canadian. Now, that's why I started to feel a lot better about scraping plates into the sink. I've got a garbage disposal and I use the green bin. If you're wondering why, it's because food sent to the sewer gets processed differently than food in the landfill. A lot of the greenhouse gas impact is avoided when it goes through a wastewater treatment plant. And if your city has a green bin collection, and I hope it does, it is 2025, that's an even better option. Yes, the image of gas guzzling trucks hauling compost isn't ideal, but it's what we've got, and I say go for it. Even if you live in an apartment and you think it's too much hassle, it's worth it. Food waste is the largest component of landfill waste in the US, where it releases methane, and it costs Americans $1.5 billion a year to dispose of. According to Waste-Free Kitchen Handbook, only 5% of discarded food is composted, and we've got a long way to go. It reeks in here, and I have no idea how I'm gonna get out. Which brings me to my last reason, home composting. Now, this is the biggest reason I feel okay with wasting food. I collect my scraps and I drop them into my red worm composting bin. Now, I know that's not an option for everyone. Not everyone owns a home. Not everyone has a yard. But honestly, all you need is a patch of grass and let nature do its thing. And if you don't use the compost, you know what? Someone in your neighborhood would love it for their garden. Now, I love having this composter, and not to sound like a total compost geek, but I used to freeze and blend all my scraps because I thought it would break down easier for the worms. I don't do that anymore. I just toss the scraps in, till it, toss it, mix it, wet it, and then I wait a week. And you know what? I love using the compost for my raised beds. And here's the best part, volunteers. That's when plants grow out of the compost naturally. I have a couple of tomato plants I definitely did not plant, and last year I had 2 pumpkin plants and I got a lot of tomato plants. I planted 3 and I have 7 that I have not planted, including 1 outside of my raised garden. Free tomatoes. Nature finds a way. So there you have it, 4 reasons plus some practical tips to rethink how you feel about wasting food. And if you can, pick up the Waste-Free Kitchen Handbook. It's a quick read with a lot of helpful info, and that's it. Oh, and let me show you something. I'm growing Carolina Reaper peppers. Ooh, I hear they're spicy.